Welcome back to Ocarina of Time 3D. In this part, we're going to be hitting up the first dungeon, the Deku Tree.
Not a bad dungeon, this one. Not really that difficult. Mostly it teaches you about moving vertically, like you have to go up to the top of it and then down.
Yeah, this is definitely the tutorial dungeon. Since this was the first 3D game, we had to know about multiple perspectives. Previous Zelda games, if you wanted to go up a floor, it was literally just an automatic staircase. So Tom, did you know that the Deku Tree is actually the only required dungeon in this entire game?
Really? Why's that?
What happened was, back in 2005 when you used to speedrun this game, you pretty much did a natural route. You did all the dungeons, you got the items that you think were required, beat Ganon, game over. And that took about 5 hours. That was way too long. So what happened was that eventually they started cutting items out. Like the first thing to go was the Lens of Truth, because you can just remember all that stuff. Then later on they found out stuff how you can actually get the light arrows by just getting the Shadow and Spirit medallion. The game doesn't check to see if you have all medallions, it just checks to see if you have Spirit, as that's the last dungeon, and Shadow, because the game assumes if you've done Fire, Water, and Forest, then you've done Spirit. So they assume that. So you get 2 medallions, and then you would get the light arrow cutscenes, and you would just go to Ganon.
This speedrunning thing is just so far removed from what I'm used to. It's kind of like a bit of a foreign concept to me, really.
It's definitely its own culture within gaming. I mean, a lot of people will say that, oh, it's on the level with esports, like the competitive fighting game community, but I wouldn't want to say it's like on a level or it's competing with it. It's definitely just its own facet of the gaming culture.
Okay, here we go. We're just about to get the slingshot, which brings in another one of Ocarina 3D's updated mechanics, the gyro controls.
Yeah, I usually turn off the gyro control just because I tend to prefer precise movement with the first person.
Now, you can keep it on and use both styles at once, or you can turn the gyro controls off altogether and just use the circle pad. Personally, I choose to keep it on, because, even though I've got wires coming out the back of my 3DS while I'm recording, it's just so easy to point and shoot. It's just another thing that ups the ease of use and makes Ocarina 3D that much more enjoyable, really.
Yeah, and definitely the first person view with the slingshot and items like that, that's leftover from when Miyamoto originally wanted Ocarina of Time to be a first person game. He thought with the 3D that going in first person would be really immersive, but that idea got shot down. And see, that's one thing I feel needs to change about Nintendo. Like, back in the day, Miyamoto did come up with great ideas, but bad ideas got shot down because they were bad ideas. Now, it seems like Nintendo just rolls over on its back whenever Miyamoto comes up with an idea because he has precedence. And it's stuff like that that causes a Paper Mario without a story to be made.
And a sequel to Super Mario Galaxy to be made with barely any story. No, I'm not bitter, why'd you ask?
So, yeah, back to that history, you had the 2 medallions, and what happened was, they eventually started cutting out more and more of the game with new and new glitches. At the beginning of 2012, one of the biggest glitches of all times was actually discovered, called Wrong Warp. So, like I said, 2012, this game is constantly being found with new glitches. It doesn't matter how old this game will get, new stuff's always going to be found. So they found Wrong Warp, and the concept is that, you know those blue teleporters that appear at the end of a dungeon to take you out and give you the cutscene? Well, they found out that there's a way that you can stand on the edge of one of these teleporters, and it activates them, but because you're only on the edge, you're not actually being lifted up into the cutscene. So what happens is that you can load up a second teleportation with the item Ferrero's Wind, and the game adds the value of the teleporter to take you to the end of the dungeon cutscene, and the Ferrero's Wind teleportation, and the game sends you to a random location.
Now that is amazing, but what I think is even more amazing is your pronunciation of Ferrero's Wind. It's like you're saying Ferrero Rocher or something, the candy.
Also, with that net, there's a way, if you do a jump slash, that you hit the edge of the wall, the recoil will actually put you up on that higher platform, skipping the entire first basement.
Ah yes, the gold skulltulas. Now, you gotta collect these little tokens in order to break the curse on a family of people, shall we say, that will be meeting later in the game. And the more you collect, the better prizes they'll give you. Mostly, I think it's wallet upgrades. MBM, it's got nothing to do with, like, slingshot upgrades and whatnot, right?
There's no slingshot increase for gold Skulltulas, it's mostly money based, and then in the original N64, the Stone of Agony.
Ah, yeah, which is actually the Shard of Agony in this version, because obviously there's no rumble on the 3DS, so instead it just gives off a pinging sound instead.
The rumble was the way you were supposed to find all the hidden grottos in the game without buying a strategy guide.
Yep. And in the original Ocarina of Time, I remember this specifically, actually, the Stone of Agony was actually shaped like a rumble pack, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty much the best part of it. The only issue with Gold Skulltulas is that the final prize is stupid. So, in this game, Link's sword can do different values of damage. I mean, most people who've played Ocarina of Time know the concept that the jump slash is double damage. So, a lot of people, if you want to do quick damage, you do the jump slash and you're good. What a lot of people don't know is that all the attacks have their own set values, and bosses actually have weaknesses to items. The most interesting thing is that in the original Ocarina of Time, the crouch stab, the attack where you have the shield out and you just keep attacking with the sword, they didn't program an attack value for that move.
So, if it has no attack value, it's basically worthless, right?
It could theoretically be worth this, but instead it's the exact opposite. It becomes the most useful move in the game. Because since there's no value put to that attack, it instead adopts the damage of the previous attack you did.
If I use, say, Din's Fire, it would adopt the attack value of that.
It would do, well, it has to usually be with a sword, but I think you can adopt Din's Fire. The most useful thing is that you would do a jump slash, and then you would do the crouch stab over and over and over, and you were literally doing multiple jump slashes at a faster speed. So this is the first time you used a Deku stick really as a torch, but you should know that the Deku stick is pretty much the most powerful child item you have.
That's a solid piece of wood, what do you expect?
The Deku stick actually does more damage than the Kokiri sword, and it does just as much damage as the Master Sword.
Really? Really? Come on now.
The Blade of Evil's Bane, forged by the goddesses, all that crap, is just as powerful as a twig.
Oh my. Now, you see the Gohma hatchlings, you can actually destroy the eggs they pop out of, and if you do, you won't have to fight them at all. But they always seem to drop behind me, and by the time I've turned around, the hatchlings will just be on me already.
What I used to do, I don't even know how I realized this the first time, was when you enter the room without entering the main section, so while you're still in that little corridor, you can point your slingshot up at the eggs while they're still on the ceiling, and you can kill them up there before they're even born. Yep, Link has a thing with killing babies and stuff before they hatch.
Well, if you think about it, most of Nintendo's heroes don't really have a problem with killing. I mean, Mario stomps Goombas all day, and the way Donkey Kong just devours helpless bananas. Horrible.
We already got a hint from that Deku scrub. 23 is number 1. I hope you all remember that, because it's kind of important for this dungeon's mini-boss. And yeah, they're technically considered this dungeon's mini-boss.
That's a bit pathetic, don't you think?
I thought of them as just a puzzle, but they're put in. They're on the same level as the Pose in the Forest Temple. These guys are the mini-boss.
Now, basically what you have to do here, as the puzzle would imply, is hit the second Deku Scrub first, then the third, then the first. In Master Quest, it kind of switches this around. You have to hit the first one first, then the third one second, and finally the second one.
And also in Master Quest, the scrub who gives you the hint, he's actually replaced with a mad scrub. They look the exact same, they're just red, and he doesn't give you a hint. So this room is really important, because not only, yes, it has the boss, big whoop-de-doo, but this room has a specific number value on it that makes this game so deliciously broken. Well, first of all, I just want to share a little childhood story. When I first came in this room, in the Ocarina of Time version, there's this fog. And I literally walked around this entire room, not knowing what the hell to do. So instead, I found out that you can point the slingshot up at her eye and kill her.
Well, that story ended abruptly.
I know, it was a quick... Well, I just needed to share that I myself have had difficulties with this game. It's not all glitches and optimized strats.
No worries, mate. We all gotta start somewhere. Now, any tips on how to take down this giant spider?
Gohma in the original version, the easy strategy killer was to do a jump slash with your Deku stick, and then use the value of that jump slash to crouch stabs, and you could kill her pretty much in one cycle. If you don't kill her in one cycle, she'll climb up the walls and then try and lay eggs. You can shoot her in the eye like Tom did, and she won't lay eggs, and you've saved yourself a mess of trouble. Otherwise, she lays more larvae, you gotta kill those, and then the cycle repeats.
I don't really think I'm good enough to do it in one cycle, to be honest. Traditionally, I just do like straight playthroughs, not 100%, but I will try and show off, some of the secrets and whatnot as we go through Ocarina of Time 3D.
So you went through the warp right there. Now I'm going to get into the big nitty-gritty of why this dungeon is the only one required. So, when you fight Gohma in a speedrun, you actually do a jump slash into her to kill both her and yourself at the same time. You can double KO the boss, and it's hilarious. The reason you do this is because you need to use the warp that goes into this cutscene, the Kokiri Emerald cutscene. This cutscene has a specific value to it. What happens is, when you do a speedrun, you first escape the forest with the various ways that we went over the last part, and you get the bottle from Kakariko Village. You come back, and you do the Deku Tree. Now, when you fight Gohma, you double KO and put yourself at the start of the dungeon. The reason you do this is because in order for this glitch to work, the last cutscene you see is very important. And when you enter the dungeon, you get that little pan shot. That's considered a cutscene within the game. And that needs to be the last cutscene you see. You double KO yourself, you're at the beginning of the dungeon. You then go back to the boss room because when the boss starts, a giant slab comes down and blocks off the door. You need that stone gone. But you also need the post-boss warp. You go back to the boss room, and you do a glitch called Ocarina item, and that's just where you hold a bottle out, and you do a backflip, and before you land from the backflip, you press the bottle, and in this case your sword button, and you play your sword like an ocarina. It's hilarious to watch.
I think it's saying something that you're blowing my mind more with random trivia than the creation of a friggin' world is right now.
It's the same. We're gonna get told this about 5 other times. We got glitches to discuss. So, you do this ocarina item, where you play your sword as an ocarina. Now, that's not the big thing. The big thing is that you do this glitch on the edge of the warp, because when you do ocarina item, you're in that scene where Link is kind of playing his ocarina, and that prevents the auto walk. Because when Link goes to the edge of the warp, he kind of like walks on his own into the warp. Ocarina item cancels that, so now you're on the edge of the warp, but the warp is activated. Instead it's saying, okay, game, we're gonna load up the Kokiri Emerald cutscene. Get the values, get the numbers ready to load it. So the game is doing that, so the warp is activated. You cancel Ocarina items, and then you walk back to the door that you entered the boss room in. You're gonna go back to the room with the 3 scrubs. On a particular frame, the warp is going to be activating the whole time. There's a particular frame where when you enter the door, the game will add up the values of the Kokiri Emerald cutscene and the basement of the Deku Tree. These 2 values add up and they create a new value. Now, coincidentally, that value is already used in this game. That new value is equal to Ganon's Tower. You walk through the door, and on the other side of the door is Ganon's Tower.
You're telling me you could beat Ganon as a child?
As a child. You beat him as a child.
Dude, can you imagine how humiliating that must be to Ganondorf, being killed by like a 7-year-old? Oh, that's so great.
So you're in Ganon's Tower, and you walk through the door, and you've actually killed Ganon. Like, it shows the scene where Ganon's collapsing because the actual room in Ganon's Tower you loaded is the outside of the tower, and that is equal to pretty much the game saying, oh, you must have beat Ganon if you're outside the tower. So Ganon dies in front of child Link, and then you do the escape with kid Link and adult Zelda out of the tower.
Oh god, you've created a 4th timeline!
I know, 4th timeline! There's actually another timeline too, because there's another glitch where you have like adult Link, child Zelda, and that made everything terrible. You do the escape, and you get to the fight with Ganon. Now, Ganon knocks away your Master Sword. I don't know what that is. All I have is this Kokiri Sword that I got outside the Deku Tree. And you fight Ganon. Now, remember how I told you different items have different attack values? and then bosses have weaknesses. Ganon is weak to 2 weapons. The Master Sword, obviously. He's also weak to Deku Sticks. Ganon is weak to Deku Sticks because I think the game developers figured that, there's no way you can have Kid Link at the Ganon fight, so why even bother dealing with the Deku Stick value?
My mind is on the verge of shattering. Any more to this particular secret?
Well, that's pretty much the end of it. You kill Ganon with the Deku Stick, and you save the land of Hyrule.
Okay, you know what? I think we're actually just going to have to exile ourselves from the forest now, because if I hear any more of this trivia, my mind is just going to literally go poof and create a 5th timeline where Entom 64 never existed.
Cool thing about Kokiri Forest, and this isn't game breaking, this is just funny trivia. The music used in Kokiri Forest was actually slowed down, remixed, and then reused as the music for Forest Haven in Wind Waker. Very slowed down, so you can't tell, but you have to listen, and it's Kokiri Forest.
There's many touching scenes in Ocarina of Time. Maybe not as many as, say, Majora's Mask, but definitely still up there. And this is like a prime example of that. Saria doesn't know if she's ever going to see Link again. So what does she do? Gives him a going away present. What does Link do with this going away present? Immediately toss it away once he gets the Ocarina of Time. Great job, Link.
I'm sorry, Saria, but I needed a magical flute that could control time and space, and you just weren't cutting it.
Remember, kids, time travel beats homemade knickknacks any day of the week. We'll see you all next time in part 3 of the Ocarina of Time 3D playthrough when we venture into Hyrule Field. See you then.